Right, welcome to the final part of the podcast where we look at Neilson Boxing and Fight Town podcast with Sport D Song. And as myself, Alex LeBox, you've been listening to the podcast, and Rob Boxing Shrew. We do have a very special guest this week as part of the Fight Town podcast in Kyle Neilson, who does a lot of the matchmaking, amongst other things, for Neilson Boxing. Welcome to the show, Kyle. How are you?
Hi, gents. Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm really well. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Nice one.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic to have you on, Carl, ahead of Saturday night in Oxford at the Kassam Stadium. It's going to be a fantastic night of boxing, none more so than the fact that it's been 60 years since Oxford has tasted pro boxing. We're excited for it, aren't we?
Do you know what? It's 60 years since Oxford last had professional boxing. We're only putting a show on with 4 fights due to the amount of demand for people to come and watch it as well. We needed a bigger venue right from the off for this one. So we're really looking forward to it.
Yeah, it really surprises me. It's been so long in such a big city where, sport is, at the forefront of things there. And, with the football and, obviously we've got the boat race, and it blows my mind that it's been so long in such a big city for something like that.
It is crazy considering there are boxers that have come out of Oxford in that time, So why haven't they done it before? I don't know.
Yeah, well, good on you guys.
Yeah, fantastic. And just on that note, Carl, with Neilson Boxing, you're really, we saw Mark speaking this week and being interviewed. You guys are really bringing boxing to that sort of part of the UK again, and it's just fantastic to see. And you're bringing new boxers through as well as sort of prospects. And how's it all been this year? Has it been a bit of a whirlwind, or have you really enjoyed it?
For me, it's been a bit of a whirlwind. I remember having a conversation with Mark in September last year, and he said, I wasn't having a great time, my daytime job. And he said, leave it, mate. Come full time for the boxing.
Yeah.
Didn't realise that we'd be 15, 16 shows in, really putting ourselves out there and doing it the way we're doing it. But you know what? I've enjoyed every moment of it, and by far the best decision that's been made.
Superb. Before we go into the card, it's not often that, I listen to a lot of boxing podcasts, and you really don't get many sort of matchmakers on. And it's nice to see and discuss the sport from different perspectives, as I'm sure you agree. So, if you don't mind us sort of going into that, could you talk us a little bit through the matchmaking process? I'm sure it's not as simple as just going down the rankings in BoxRec and picking a name. So, can you talk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So it depends where we are. We've got our debutants and the guys that we're trying to progress and build up. And a lot of that is just talking with the managers, talking with the fighter themselves as well, and just making sure, listen, these journeymen do a great job up and down the country, but they're still dangerous.
Yeah.
You've got to pick the right one for these guys. And then the further down the card you go, when you're looking at these championships, that's when you start looking at BoxRec a little bit more. You start looking at who's around. Styles, a lot of boxers, orthodox boxers don't want to fight southpaws, or it's all over the place. It is honestly, and when I first started doing it, it's easy, isn't it? Just you match a couple of fighters together. It's not that easy, absolutely not that easy at all. But it is a lot of work with managers and coaches. A lot of it, the boxers find out at a later date, but 90% of my time is spent on the phone to the managers and coaches.
Yeah. And how does that, and as you can, we've seen, there's been a couple of shows this year where, there are injuries or, last minute pullouts of opponents. How does it work with finding a last minute opponent? Do you get a list of, journeymen potentially who are, have gloves, will travel, or, how does that work, especially with the last minute kind of things?
I'll be honest with you, this year, with the way it's been coming out of COVID, journeymen have been incredibly busy. There's been shows where we've sat here and gone, we're a week out from fight night. What are we going to do? We need guys. But there isn't anyone we know we can just call upon. It is then go back to square one, start again. Who else might have had a fight cancelled? Who may have cancelled a show? Who can we grab quickly to try and save ours? There's no easy route around it. Like I said, back to square one and we start all over again.
Yeah, you're right about these, the journeymen. We'll go into Rustam in a little while, but he's probably had over 20 fights this year, and that's just ridiculous, isn't it?
Fair play to them guys. It must be hard. Like their bodies must be screaming for a break, but they still turn up week out. and they do what they got to do. So it's a credit to them.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating to hear the workings of that, Carl, and how it all works in matchmaking, and for boxing fans to realise as well that, you know, when it comes to putting, you know, not only shows like Neilson Boxing, but when you're looking at shows across the UK and the world, it's a tough job to get these boxers on the shows and keep them fit and keep the managers happy and everything else, isn't it? It's a really tough gig.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I wish it was as easy as just telling a boxer and a trainer who they were fighting, but it's not. You got to keep everyone happy, and you know, the happier they are, the more tickets they sell, the more, you know, they want to come back and fight for you again. They know what you're bringing to the table. So yeah, you got to keep everyone happy.
Fantastic, Carl. Now, this weekend you've just literally warmed up the show in Oxford, and as you said, it's going to be an absolute full house. The atmosphere is going to be absolutely electric in there. We've got Bradley Townsend, who's 10-0 against Paul Scaife. He's a good boxer to watch, isn't he?
Yeah, you know what, I like Brad. We've known Brad from day one. He's always fought a welterweight, and this is his second one now at super lightweight. So they're trying to just bring him down and make sure everything's adjusted nicely and he's ready. You know, because he's now 10-0. Hopefully after the weekend he goes 11-0, and then that's like English eliminator. Then you know what I mean. So they're just trying to make sure everything's there, everything's fine tweaked, and we're hoping, God forbid, everything goes right on Saturday, then we could be looking at the end of the year and try and get something a bit special for him.
Yeah. Do you think? Go on, Alex. Go on.
Go on, Rob.
No, I was just going to say, do you think that he's going to potentially be chasing a stoppage this weekend? I know he'll be seeking his first stoppage this weekend, and you know, Paul, he's only been stopped a couple of times himself, so you know, something's got to give there, hasn't it?
Yeah, you know what, like you said, Paul's a tough lad. He don't get stopped very often. But when I spoke to his team, you know, I think they do see this as the opportunity. This is the one where they're really gonna push Brad. They're gonna want to see him put the work into it, like up the work rate, everything like that. They want to see him stop him.
And with that, Carl, you know, with Brad, he's got those low hands. He takes the center of the ring and he throws fantastic combinations. He's a crowd pleaser, isn't it? And obviously, hopefully, he can look good and then push forward to titles. Is that what we're looking at for Bradley Townsend?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, all being well, you know, he gets through this weekend uninjured, gets the win, and I'd like to see him back in our Swindon November show then in an eliminator, or if not, a Southern Areas title shot.
Yeah. Have you spoken to Bradley about just the fact that he's fighting in Oxford? You know, he's from Oxford. It's the first big fight night there for 60 years. I mean, that's a couple of generations of his life. Previous. It must be such an honour for him. What has he said to you about that?
Do you know what? All the lads are the same. Fighting in Oxford, being from Oxford, I don't think it gets much better for these guys. You know, I think it's more of a shame for him that he's not fighting for a title, because that's the talk, really. You know, if I could get a title, I'd sell more tickets. We'd do this. So they're just buzzing to be fighting in their hometown.
Yeah, because I think all four of the sort of home fighters are either born or live in Oxford. Is that right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, every single one of them is Oxford.
Fantastic. You just don't see that on a card very often, do you?
No, absolutely not.
No, and Carl, another fight on the bill which I want to look at. Give us an idea of what Jordan Flynn's all about. I mean, we know he's a very slick boxer, and he's a prospect at 6-0. But you know, there's a lot of people talking about this lad, isn't there?
Yeah. So do you know what, Jordan fought on one of our Bracknell shows earlier in the year, and on the last minute add on to the card. And do you know, he's just great to deal with. You know, he's managed by and trained by Kevin Mitchell, who, you know, name speaks for itself as well.
Yeah.
He's the full ticket. He will go a long way, and you credit to him, you know. And a shout out now that this kid's done 420 tickets for this show.
Wow, that's absolutely
Alex.
fantastic.
I heard Alex's eyes widen, and he loves Kevin Mitchell, don't you, Alex?
I do. I mean, I've always been a fan of Kevin Mitchell. I think hopefully we'll have him on the show soon as well and have a chat with him. But I loved watching Kevin Mitchell fight, and who didn't? You know, he was an entertainer and a fantastic boxer to boot as well. But
just the knowledge that he'll be able to pass on to Jordan as well, Kyle. You know, it's invaluable, isn't it?
Well, that's it. And you know, I had this conversation with Jordan. You know, you can have any coach you want in your corner, but when you've had someone that stood in the center of the ring and gone with some of the best in the world, it doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's looking like Rob, earlier on you mentioned Rustam Fatakulin, who has been around the block, but as we all know with journeymen, and I sound like a broken record, you know, they are difficult to get out of there. They're not always the easiest opponents because they don't come forward as much, do they?
Yeah. No, that's right. And Kyle, you must know of this fella quite a bit because he's been in with you know, a couple of the lads who've been on Neilson cards this year.
Yeah, you know, I know Rustin, his manager whilst he's here, Al Siesta. We've used Rustin a fair bit this year. Listen, he'd been in with some tough kids. He went in with Conor Graham, one of our swimming shows, and I remember Conor put him on his backside in the first round, and I thought, you know what, someone might have cracked him here. And then fair play to Rustin, he dug deep and survived the other 5 rounds, you know. And it was just, he is a tough kid, and I think in the words of his manager, it will take a sledgehammer to get him out of there.
Wow.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it.
No.
There we go. Fight Town podcast listeners and Sport to Some listeners. That Jordan Flynn, as described by Kyle Neilson, is certainly one to look out for. Rob, what other fights on the bill take your fancy on this Saturday weekend coming?
Well, yeah, next down the list, Tom Brennan, another lad who you know, is born in Oxford. So again, a really important one for him. Kyle, talk us through the situation. I believe there was a change of opponent, or he was due to be in with a different opponent, and that, you know, that recently he was replaced. Can you talk us through that?
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, so Tom was meant to fight John Brennan. It was Battle of the Brennans, people were calling it. We were really looking forward to that, you know. That for us was a genuine big 50-50 fight. Unfortunately for John, he's got stuff going on outside the ring. I think they've welcomed a new baby. So congratulations to them.
Yeah,
brilliant.
Congratulations.
The time wasn't right for him, unfortunately. So we sat down and spoke with Tom. Tom actually asked me for Martin Shaw. He come to me and said, Kyle, can you get this lad? So, you know, it's my job, really.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Martin Shaw has a fantastic story. You know, he's, you know, started about 10 years ago as pro, and then he squeezed in quite a few fights in a couple of years, and then he had quite a long layoff, didn't he? He was out of the ring for sort of 8-9 years, and all of a sudden he's back. He's active this year. You know, I think it's his 6th fight this year potentially. You know, what do you know much about the story behind that?
Do you know what? I don't. I remember when I started this job, he was one of them names, you know, when we first started chasing, and you get told by the manager, no, he's not active, he's out the gym. So after a while, you know, you kind of forget about them lads. You know not to go to them because you know they've not been in the gym. And then all of a sudden, like you said, his name's popping up more and more.
Yeah.
He's back, he's active, he's keeping himself busy. So, you know, credit to Josh Whale, who's been in contact with me and offered these guys to come down.
Yeah, good for Martin Shaw getting back into it after a bit of a layoff as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's great. Now, I want to give a special shout here to Kieran Flanagan, who gets back into the ring after his debut fight. I believe it was at the York Hall. It was a loss on his debut, which is always very, very tough to take. But I watched that fight, Kyle. I was there, and he was just desperately unlucky in that fight. And I don't think any boxer starting out their career should take a loss on their debut as a negative. It's a case of picking yourself back up again and you know, really showing what you can do, isn't it?
Yeah, you know, I was with Kieran today, and I was just making sure I've had the chat with him. Look, mate, how you feeling? How's it going? It's you know, it's a big thing making your debut as it is. To do it at York Hall, on top of the pressure of selling all the tickets and everything else that goes with it, I think it was just too much for him, you know.
Yeah.
It sounds great. Let me go to York Hall. Let's make the debut, and you know, in the iconic big venue in London. You know, unfortunately for him, it wasn't his night. That was a learning fight, a big learning fight. He's learned a lot from it, both inside and outside the ring. And he's more confident than ever now coming into Saturday night. You know, there's only one option for Saturday night in his head now. So I'm really looking forward to it. And I've got everything crossed for Kieran. He's one of our guys. And yeah, he's got to get that win Saturday night.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Nice little scrap as well. I mean, Nabil Ahmed, you know, he's just come off the back of his first win as well. So nice little clash in terms of the confidence of the two fighters. So it should be very interesting.
Yeah, you know what? Even with that win, like you said, credit to the bill, because even with that win, it doesn't do him any favors, his record. He's a tough kid.
Yeah.
He's a tough kid. And, he's got a couple of draws in there as well. They're not all lost.
Yeah.
So, Kieran's got to be on his game Saturday night. But like I said, everything is crossed for him.
Absolutely. And just to echo you there, Kyle, as well, as we all know with boxing, and especially with Kieran here, hats off to him in the first place for getting in the ring, as we know how competitive a sport boxing is. But it's going to be a fantastic opportunity for him on Oxford, and a chance for him to sort of really push that York Hall debut behind him, really, and crack on with the rest of his career. Hey.
Yeah, so he knows this is his chance to right or wrong. And like I said previously, there's only one outcome in his mind. So let's sit tight and hope everything comes through on Saturday night.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Good luck to him. Good luck to him. I'll tell you what, he goes and gets a win this weekend. We'll get him on the pod in a couple of weeks.
He'd love that. He's a great talker as well.
Yeah, let's do it.
Sounds absolutely fantastic. Now, just to finish up on the Fight Town podcast, we did speak briefly, Carl. What else have we got coming up towards the end of the year with Neilson Boxing?
So after this weekend, we go November the 5th back to the iconic York Hall. We got a stacked 10 fight card there, including Chris Davies versus Bryce Goodridge for the Southern Area Light Heavyweight title, which I must say I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah.
Both guys are incredible. So we got a couple of 50-50s on there. We got the return of Johnny Ward on there as well. Billy Jackson. We got Jake Henty on there. So that's a massive card. I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, absolutely huge. And it's funny, actually, because since we've been doing the Fight Town podcast, some of those names are becoming very familiar. And, you've got a good amount of boxers coming through and a lot of prospects. And it's very exciting for boxing fans to look forward to as well, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
And like I said, again, another one of them shows. We got a couple of developments on there, a couple of lads making their debuts, but you've got the big finishing with a nice title fight.
Absolutely fantastic. Now, listen, Sport D Song listeners, thanks again for listening to the podcast. We are forever grateful. If you can subscribe and like the podcast, it does help us a lot. And give us a follow on Twitter, where you can find out what we've been up to, and also follow Neilson Boxing on their journey towards what looks like it's going to be about 18 shows for the year. But it's been fantastic having you on, Kyle. Welcome back whenever you choose, and have a great evening on Saturday night.
Perfect, gents. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, brilliant, Kyle. Great insight, that. Thank you so much.
No problem, gents. I look forward to catching up with you again.
Lovely. Look after yourself. Cheers.
Cheers, then.